pressure with that introduction. I think what is most important for you to know today is that I do believe that my sense of self is shaped through relationship with people. I believe that it is your and my ability to foster healthy and good relationship that really determines how we will master life. It's not about the material things that we will acquire or the accolades that we will have behind our name. It's not about where we're going to live someday and what we're going to drive someday. It is really fundamentally about how good we become at building and keeping healthy, solid relationships. And so that forms a big part of the work that I do. And today, yes, I've been tasked with speaking about mental health, which I think is such a complex or broad topic. And I think the MC has mentioned that we are here this afternoon from young to old, or let's say young to wise, and experienced in life. And so I really want to speak to each person that's here, so that each of us, no matter what age we are, or level of maturity we are sitting with, we are able to take something out of what I'm going to share. So, in trying to contextualize mental health, the first question I asked myself is, what is health? What is good health? Maybe you've thought about this before, maybe you've not. But the World Health Organization believes that health is something that is described as a state of complete, meaning full, physical, mental, and social well-being. And it is not merely the absence of disease or illness. So yes, we think of health and we think if someone's not sick, they are healthy. But then we also understand that there are many individuals who are fighting various mental health disorders. There are a lot of adolescents. I work at a high school with teenagers who I counsel on a daily basis. And I see a lot of the mental health challenges that adolescents are sitting with and dealing with. And so what is mental health? Mental health includes you and my emotional, our psychological, meaning whatever is going on up here, and our social well-being. Social meaning as you are seated here within a community context today. We, you and I are not, no man is an island. We exist within an ecosystem. And so mental health speaks to your emotional well-being and capacity, it speaks to your psychological well-being and capacity, and it speaks to your social well-being and capacity. I deal with a lot of teenagers who struggle with social spaces and who have what we refer to as social anxiety, where they would quite literally sit alone at break because they don't know how to start a conversation or introduce themselves to someone. Maybe me saying this today to you resonates with you. Maybe you are a person who has struggled with being within a social space or setting. And so that really speaks to your mental health. Mental health also, in other words, is all about how we think, how we act, and how we feel. Now that hit me quite a bit. How we think, how we act, and how we feel. So it's something that you and I, that really forms a big part of our lives. Mental health also speaks to how we relate to people. How do you relate to people? If you were to think of that for a moment this afternoon, how do you relate to people around you, whether young or old? People within your home. What are those relationships like? How do you relate to a parent or a grandparent or a caregiver or a child or a sibling? And then mental health is also about the choices that you and I make. Preferably healthy choices, which is not always the reality for us. So I wanted to start my talk with what we refer to in the mental health space as a mindfulness exercise. And it's only really going to work because you're quite a large group if you agree with me that we can do this. Okay? Do you agree with me that we can do this? Yes. So I'm going to ask you just to make sure that you are seated comfortably. If you have a phone in your hand, a book, a bag, put it down for me. Just make sure that you are as comfortable as you can possibly be in the space where you are seated. If you can, give yourselves a little room, then do that. Okay, and now I'd like you to close your eyes for me. questions this afternoon, and you might find your mind wandering off, even as you are trying to answer these questions. Okay, so it's a reflective exercise. It means nobody's going to speak out or say out what it is that I'm asking you. Just simply going to think about what it is that I'm asking you. The first question I'm asking is, what is on your mind as you are sitting here this afternoon? What is on your mind as you are seated here this afternoon? Maybe there are some things that you are worried about that has absolutely no relevance to where you find yourself this afternoon. So what's going on in that mind of yours? Maybe it's somebody that you're thinking about, or that you've been thinking about. The second question, what emotion is seated with you today? If you could identify just one feeling or emotion, what would that one thing be? Are you sitting here feeling angry at somebody, upset over something? Or are you maybe worried about something? What emotion is seated within you today? And then the third and final question, what is your physical body saying to you today? Are you tired? Exhausted? Are there some aches and pains? Okay, you can open your eyes. So, what this mindfulness exercise usually reveals to me, often when I would do it, is that the mind is really full. Mindfulness or mindful. I usually find that there's a lot that is happening up here. And I would often encourage teenagers, and this would also apply to adults because I do it myself, every morning before you set foot out of your bed, ask yourself those 3 questions. Before you even lift your leg to get up out of your bed, ask yourself, what is my mind saying to me this morning? What is on my mind? What emotion or emotions are seated with me? And what is my physical body saying to me? So now why, Candice, why should I be doing this? What is the relevance of this to me? So this is one example of how you and I can build our self-awareness. I don't know if you've ever met a person who lacks complete self-awareness. I have definitely encountered it many a times within my professional space. I've also sadly seen it in a relationship context or relational context to people that I personally know, where in a moment of conversating with that person, you realize this person has no ability to look inward. Everything else and everyone else is the issue or the problem, besides the ability to reflect and ask yourself, what's actually going on with me today? Why am I showing up the way that I am showing up today? And why is self-awareness so important? It's because often when everything is going wrong on the outside of us, it is when we are being summoned to an inward call. And if we don't have the ability to look inward and ask those important questions, what is your mind saying to you? What emotions or feelings are seated with you? Some of us can walk around angry for days but not be able to acknowledge what that is. Everyone else will see it and be like, what's up with her? Or what's going on with her today? And you're like, no, nothing's wrong with me, I'm fine. But actually, no, you're not fine. Something is very clearly happening with you. But do you have the capacity to look inward and ask yourself those questions? And so that's just a simple example of how you can do just a check-in with yourself. Like, what's really going on with you? What is it that is happening with you? If you're saying to me that you are a person who finds yourself often really angry, anger is only the tip of that iceberg. Like the movie Titanic, maybe only the older generation will understand. But with that movie, they underestimated what was underneath the water. They saw only the tip of that iceberg as the ship was approaching. And that's what anger is. It's only what is visible to the world. It's the thing that we can see. We can see someone is angry, but what is beneath the surface? Anger is only the emotion that masks whatever is happening below. So in therapy, I would ask a child or a teenager that I'm working with, even an adult, okay, so we can identify that you are angry. Because now remember, mental health is how I feel, how I think, how I act. So if I'm feeling angry, it affects my mental health. So now we ask the question, okay, so you're really angry at your mom. Where does that anger come from? Let's go and dig deep below the surface and see what's hidden underneath that iceberg. Is it disappointment? Is it that somebody needed to show up for you and didn't? Or that something happened to you that you did not deserve? What is it that's below that anger? Even if you are here as an adult today and within your ecosystem, your family context, you are dealing with a teenager, a child who to you seems to have regressive behavior or who is showing up angry, that's only the tip of the iceberg. You and I as adults must be able to go back and ask, what's going on below the surface? What's happening that you and I cannot see, that is not visible to the eye? And so I have listed some practical ways of improving your mental health. But I think, honestly, as a therapist, I will fail you today if I don't share with you what I believe is most fundamental for you to know in terms of achieving good mental health. I think it was the Sunday school teacher that said that we all have a name. And in the same way that we all have a name, we all have a story. And so about that story, I want to read this quote to you. Because maybe you're sitting and you're thinking, Candice, I don't really think my story is that significant. There's a lot going on there that I don't really want to associate with. But I want to say to you, regardless of what that story is, it matters. Just as your name matters, your story matters. There is purpose in whatever you have gone through. And so David Stoop says the following: we were all raised in dysfunctional families. Some were more healthy than others, and some were more destructive than others. But because we are all sinners, we are all dysfunctional. The more unhealthy the family, the more damage to the children. And that damage goes on to affect us into our adult lives. And so yes, even if the story is not that great, I want to register with you today. You, me, everybody here, no matter how glamorous the person may appear to you, or how good they might look, or how all together they might seem to have things, there is a level of dysfunction that exists. Because you and I are not perfect. And so yes, as much as we are different, we are very much the same. Because we all have a story to tell. So what is your story? What is that narrative that you have written? What is the story that you tell yourself about who you are? A lot of that has to do with how you were raised. And the caregivers that were in your space growing up. So think about that for a moment. What is my story? Do I know what my story is? What is the story I tell myself about my life? Because that story you tell yourself is based on your perception of the world. What is my perception? It's my experience of things. We will all have different stories because we have different perceptions, because we have different experiences of the world. Doesn't make yours right, doesn't make mine wrong, just makes it different. So how you think, how you feel, how you act has a lot to do with how you will see the world. And how you see the world is based on how you were raised. So Liz mentioned something very briefly about my belief that we are created for safety and connection. Like, what does that mean, Candice? It means that fundamentally we are created for relationship. God is a God of relationship. He is a God of relationship. And so it's you and my work to master that as much as we can. And you know where it starts? It doesn't start in gatherings like this, it starts at home. To the parents in the house, the grandparents in the house, the great-grandparents in the house, it starts at home. Your and my experience of safety and connection starts before we were born. The utero experiences every emotion the mother goes through within 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks. What does that mean, Candice? It means that your and my experience of safety, our first experience we've ever had of feeling safe, was a wordless experience. I'll say that again. Your and my first experience of safety, not physical safety, an emotional, deep sense of I'm safe, I'm protected, I'm loved, that started as a wordless experience when you were still in your mother's womb. And so yes, you can very much be born into adversities and challenges and trauma. You can very much be born already traumatized, your nervous system already impacted by what you went through in the utero. And so when children display certain regressive or adverse behaviors, we don't tend to look inward or ask, where do I think that's really coming from? What was that 9 months like for that child? More so, what has it been like since birth? Is there an attuned and attached parent that has been present for that child, that has created for that child a sense of safety? So if you find teenagers or adolescents, and I know that you are in this space here, I'm not speaking over you or above you, but if you find teenagers dealing with mental health challenges, let's go back a few years and ask, how present were you as a parent in those years? How attuned were you? Were you a safe parent to your child? So it's inevitable that we will all go through adversities. We'll go through challenges. Life is not perfect. Like David Stoops says, there is a certain level of dysfunction that exists within every one of us. But not every adversity has to lead to trauma. Not every difficulty or challenge that you go through in your life has to lead you to a place of trauma. And I know that word's been thrown around a lot, especially since COVID, and we've come out of COVID by God's grace. And a lot of us have gone through a lot of traumatic experiences in our lives. Whether it's things that happened to us that we didn't deserve, whether it is the loss of loved ones, whether it is the abandonment of a caregiver or somebody that needed to be there and be my safe person but wasn't. It still doesn't need to lead to trauma. So something that I would often try to sort of simplify is, what is trauma? If you and I were just to simplify that for a moment, because we use the word a lot, but I'm so traumatized, I've gone through this trauma, but what is it really? So we are created with a nervous system. The nervous system that you and I have been created with is the command center for everything that you and I do. It picks up on danger and it picks up on safety for us. It's that feeling you have that something is not okay. It feels like something's going to happen. It's that thing. So our nervous system is our command center. And since we all go through adversities, we all go through challenges, what's the difference, Candice? How can two people go through the same thing or similar things? One person turns out okay and the other person not. How does that work? So I would usually use a slinky, and I haven't brought it with me today. And a slinky is that little toy that kids play with. I don't know if you have seen it before, but you sort of just extend it and you bring it back and you extend it. And so in explaining to people what the nervous system is and how trauma looks, and I'm going to simplify it for you today, and I hope that it sticks with you and that you remember what it is. So imagine that the sphincter is being extended and something adverse happens and all of a sudden it shakes. So now it's out of bounds, right? And that's the adversities that's happening, the challenges, and then okay, we're okay again. And then something happens again and it rocks your whole world and it's shaken. Trauma is going through that, in that moment, having that shaking taking place and having nobody safe there afterwards to say, Candice, I know you went through this thing, but it's going to be okay. You are safe, you are protected, you are loved. And when that happens, the nervous system brings itself back into alignment. Because the nervous system is our command center. So what is trauma then? It's going through those adversities and having nobody safe show up after it's happened. Nobody there to soothe you, to calm you, to help you work through and regulate what you've gone through. And that is how trauma takes place. So maybe you have gone through something really big in your life. And so what you can think about based on that experience is, who was there to show up for me after that thing happened to me? And if there was nobody that showed up to make you feel safe in that moment, it means that you most likely have gone through some trauma. And so if you want to fundamentally know how we heal from whatever we've gone through, it is safety. It is finding safe people. You want to have good mental health? Find people who make you feel safe. Safety is the glue. Safety brings that dysregulated nervous system back into a regulated nervous system. I worked at the regional court for some years, at the sexual offences court in Cape Town specifically, and I worked with victims of rape and violence, and we were working with them, with minors, toward preparing them for court. And I was often blown away at how one child was susceptible to 4 different experiences of sexual abuse or rape. Different perpetrator, different place where it happened, completely independent experiences, but to the same child. And I never understood that. Do you know what was happening there? That command center, that nervous system, was so dysregulated that it couldn't pick up on danger, because that's what it's meant to do. If your nervous system is dysregulated, it cannot pick up on danger and safety. Research has shown that victims who go through sexual abuse and rape tend to isolate and withdraw themselves, because I suppose you most likely feel that you just want to be on your own. But further research into that revealed that it's when they find safe people and relationships that they heal. You and I can hurt in community, but we can also heal within community. We just need to find the right people to help us heal. And so I want to end with 7 practical mental health tips for you. But before I even get to that, I just want to say, if you are here and on everything that I've mentioned this afternoon, there's something that you could identify in your own life, something that you have gone through. I want you to say to yourself, particularly as a child, something that you have encountered as a child where there was nobody safe showing up there for you. I want you to repeat to yourself, it was never desired, it was never deserved, but it happened anyway. Say that to yourself whenever that thing comes up for you. And what I also want to push you to do is to find safe people. Find healthy ways of coping and dealing with whatever that thing was that you went through. I know I'm speaking quite long, I'm going to just wrap it up. In mental health, we refer to the river of cruelty. We use this model in the work that we do. The river of cruelty, if you can try to just picture a flowing river. The river of cruelty speaks to how cruelty is passed on from one generation to the next. From one generation to the next. Parent, child becomes adult, child, and so it goes. That same experiences of cruelty. Now, what is cruelty? First definition, it is the intentional or deliberate infliction of pain or suffering on someone. And then the second, we've all been guilty of, it is the blatant disregard of another person. So we all have, perhaps we haven't all been victim to experiences of cruelty, but we've definitely all been on the other end, blatantly disregarding people. So think about what are some experiences of cruelty that you've had. Teenage pregnancy, high school dropouts, substance abuse in the home, domestic violence in the home, separated parents, divorced family, mental illness. You take your pick of experiences of cruelty that you have gone through in your life. How do you make the painful shift after you identify what those things are? It is by acknowledging that you have gone through those things in order to move from that. It was never desired, it was never deserved, it just happened to me. It was never desired, never deserved, it just happened to you. Okay. 7 mental health tips. I'm going to end on a lighter note this afternoon. The first, and I love this because I used to do this a lot as a teenager myself, write down the things that you are thinking about. Whatever's on your mind. Find a journal, anything. It doesn't have to be something expensive or something elaborate. Just a little notebook. And write down what those thoughts are that you have. There's a lot of good in just being able to put down whatever's going on up here on paper. That's going to help with your mental health. The second, when you find yourself super stressed out and overwhelmed, try to think of something positive amidst whatever those things are that you are dealing with. I saw a reel on Instagram a while back, and it was so profound. This woman was holding a glass of, there was dirt in the glass. And she was saying, and she started opening the tap, and the water starts pouring into that glass. She says, when you go through something difficult, and the water's pouring, and this dirt is filling up in this glass. She says, we tend to want to tell everybody about this dirt, the stuff that we are going through and what we're dealing with. See the water as the positive. So yes, it starts out as the water fills the glass, you see the dirt. Eventually, she says, the more you speak positively, the more that water was filling that glass, the dirt eventually disappeared. And that's the power of remaining positive. Finding small things that you and I can be grateful for. Gratitude. Even when we feel like there's nothing that we are, feeling positive about or grateful for. Find something. Just getting up in the morning, that's grace. That's something to be grateful for. So find the positive amidst the things that you are going through and facing. Don't focus on those negative things. And then number 3, and this really depends on how safe it is for you to do so, but if you can take a walk around the block. Just a very quick, short walk. And of course it depends on the area and if it's safe for you to do so. So disclaimer to that one, okay? Might not be entirely safe. But if you can't take a walk, listen to some music. Listen to something that might encourage you. And then I like this. Make a list of your safe people. Who are your safe people? Who are the people that make you feel like you can be completely yourself, you can share things with them without them judging you, without them giving you unsolicited advice? Who are those people in your life that make you feel safe when you are in this space? That calms your nervous system. And then practice some self-care in the small things that you do. To the ladies, doing your hair, doing your nails, like whatever makes you feel good about yourself, do those things. And then you always have to counter whatever negative thoughts you have with positive things. I would always say to the girls that I work with, the teenagers, get a little sticky note, write down positive things about yourself on there. Might be a little bit difficult if you've never done it before. But like, I am strong. I am smart. Write those things down and paste it all over in your room. Put it in your school bag, wherever you're going to see it. In your class books. When you open your book, there's like, you are strong. Because just seeing that is a message that you are sending to your brain. And will definitely help you improve your mental health. And so the bottom line is, there are really a number of small and impactful things that we can do to improve our overall well-being and our mental health. I think fundamentally what I wanted to bring across to you this afternoon is safety is the key. Safety is going to bring healing. Finding safe people is going to help you heal. Finding safe people is going to improve your mental health. And it's okay, no matter what the story is or what the story was. I think someone said it here earlier. You and I can reinvent ourselves and recreate new versions of who we are. Our childhood is 18 years of our lives. Our adult life is over 50 years of our life. So guess what? You can reinvent yourself and say, I want to show up as the following now. I am no longer what has happened to me and what I've gone through. I am going to be A, B, and C. And you walk in that. We can re-emerge, reinvent, reintroduce ourselves to whoever we want to be. And there are no limitations to that for you, regardless of what your story is. Thank you.